Well, good morning, Navid. We're here together again. Looking forward to another little chat here, learning a little bit more from you. Today, what we're looking to talk about is sovereignty, anarchy, and international relations. So, the first question coming in here: how is the principle of sovereignty related to global politics? And also, why do you argue that this relationship enables a war-prone account of world politics?
Well, it's nice to be here with you, Evan. In the sphere that is global politics, sovereignty is considered as the most fundamental norm or an integral principle for conceiving international relations. This, in part, explains why sovereignty is the defining feature of modern international law. It is so because sovereignty demarcates, indeed establishes the norms and rules and, above all, principles underlining state relations. That sovereignty is rendered as an absolutely absolute principle for thinking about global politics and international law alike. It has to do with the fact that the present world order is conceptualized in relation to the category of sovereign state. This is a catalyst for what might be called a state-centric approach to making sense of international relations, which takes as given the primacy of the state, in this case as a sovereign unit, or states as sovereign units. This also means that the state is seen as the building block of the international order. In other words, the concept of sovereignty is glamorized as an aspect, or I should say as an internal aspect of, or fundamental fact informing the world order. But regarding my point, namely that the present global order is conceptualized in relation to the category of sovereign state, allow me to explain why I make this argument. In his groundbreaking work entitled The Anarchical Society, Study of Order in World Politics, Hedley Bull, the thinker who has arguably given the most systematic attention to the concept of world order, defines global order, and I'm quoting him, as a pattern of activity that sustains the elementary or primary goals of the society of states. In this sense, the understanding of world order to which we have fallen is regularized, according to Bow, as certain pattern activities, or in his words, pattern practices of exchange among discrete political units, that is to say, states, which recognize each other to be independent. And here is where the concept of sovereignty enters the debate. Sovereignty becomes a norm or legal principle, by which means the state, as a sovereign unit or entity, is elevated to the status of the highest or supreme political authority within a given territory.
So, what you're saying is the state has absolute authority. Now, the question is, how does the state exercise its sovereign rights?
As a legal entity, the state exercises its sovereign right in two respects: internally and externally. Internally, sovereignty connotes that the state exercises supreme, highest, or ultimate authority within a territory, which in turn allows the state a free pass to exercise force within its territorial boundaries. This simply references what is called territoriality. External sovereignty speaks to a recognition on the part of all states that the sovereign entity is one of them, so to speak. In this sense, external sovereignty is understood in relation to what is called the principle of non-intervention, itself a part and parcel of international law. It's a principle that connotes non-interference on the part of other sovereign states in another's internal affairs. The recognition of a relationship of formal equality among so-called sovereign states is what this is. In this regard, external sovereignty is something like a social contract forged among states. Therefore, sovereignty is a constructed social contract or a socially constructed norm, a socially constructed legal principle.
Okay. Well, so far you've answered two questions, namely how the principle of sovereignty is related to global politics or international relations, and also addressed how the state exercises its sovereign rights. Now to the why question, namely, why do you argue that this relationship enables a war-prone orientation of world politics?
Given in international relations, state is privileged as the primary unit. The principle of sovereignty has also been privileged as that which keeps the global order intact, in part by fostering the aforementioned relationship of formal equality among states, where states can exist or survive, to be precise, in part based on the principle of non-intervention. But, and here is the crucial point that explains the war-prone dynamic of state sovereignty as it relates to international relations. The principle of sovereignty can only be applied to state and or state relations and not beyond, meaning it cannot be extended to the realm of international relations. This implies that international relations is replete by what is called a condition of anarchy, which is really another socially constructed concept informing international politics. By anarchy is simply meant lack of a centralized authority or absence of a higher authority, the absence of an entity like a global sovereign. In anarchy, there is no supreme or sovereign authority to settle disputes or enforce laws or regulate state relations or even mitigate wars, so goes the argument. Treating it as a perpetual condition, we have decidedly decided that anarchy is non-transcendental. It is a condition that cannot be transcended.
So, what is it about the state of anarchy that can't be transcended? Why can it not be transcended?
We have been both unable as well as unwilling to develop a political penicillin to remedy or rein in the condition of anarchy. A point that highlights not just lack of political will on the part of us, scholars of international relations, to solve the puzzle of anarchy. It also speaks to the knowledge impoverishment and above all, the paradigmatic bankruptcy of international relations studies as a scientific field responsible for generating knowledges and by extension, political policy practices that can inform non-anarchical, that is to say, peaceful relations. Although able to convert mere atoms into agents of immense destruction, land on the moon, or travel faster than the speed of sound, we are incapable of reining in anarchy, a condition we ourselves have created.
So, if, in your words, we've decided that international relations is replete by a permanent condition of anarchy, where there is no higher authority to regulate relations among sovereign states operating at an international level, then what does this mean so far as the prospect of global peace is concerned?
So far as the knowledge and policy practice about global politics is concerned, or so far as global peace is the referent object of policymaking, we have settled with the pernicious idea that international relations is and will always be a jungle-like condition of anarchy, where warfare becomes nothing more and, crucially, nothing less than an enduring feature of world politics, a normalized, indeed privileged activity is what warfare is. Put differently, in anarchy, there is no higher authority. And because in anarchy, there is no higher authority, the international system will continue to operate in a conflict-prone environment, in what is called the state of nature. state of nature understood as a condition of a war of everyone against everyone else. This is a kind of international state of nature where sovereign states are always at the ready to go at each other, to fight tooth and nail. This international state of nature is the manifestation of a world convulsing image of global politics. Ultimately, it is these peculiar understanding of state sovereignty and the state of nature, ones that construe sovereign states to be operating in a perpetual condition of anarchy, that cast out any possibility of peaceful relations among states operating at the international level, rendering global peace unattainable by default, if not obsolete.
How has this account of anarchy, sovereignty, and state of nature been enabled historically?
In order for me to explain how this really war-prone account of international relations have been enabled, that is, how its rules of formation or its logics have been devised and developed historically, we need to go over the work of a seminal thinker whose influence on international relations few can rival, Thomas Hobbes. In Hobbes, we can discern just how the principle of state sovereignty, state, and state of nature have been materialized.
Well, this is a pretty dense topic. I think it's quite fascinating and something that I don't know if a lot of people have considered before. A lot of people see the punk rock anarchy, the big A symbol, as sort of a culture of a certain type of music or a certain subculture. But ultimately, I guess the argument you're making here is that the state of anarchy on the international level is actually what prevents us from finding any kind of global peace and is potentially the cause of our ultimate destruction through some sort of nuclear war. A lot to unpack here and a lot to think about. And I think I look forward to maybe discussing more of these ideas of Thomas Hobbes with you.
Thank you. Well, the idea of sovereignty and anarchy, absolutely critical for understanding global relations, also timely, I myself am convinced that the only way to mitigating warfare and establishing a lasting global peace is by way of the creation of a global sovereign that exercises authority beyond the state. That's the only way. But I also want to reference the argument of one observer who once wrote, "The anarchy embedded in the institution of state sovereignty is reaching towards a climax. A world growing to maturity must abandon this fetish." We are at that juncture in history, and abandoning that fetish, or the fetish that is state sovereignty, should or must be the priority.